Hi, everybody. Welcome to Cox Connections. Brad Grundmeyer, Director of Public Government Affairs for Cox, Louisiana. Thank you so much for tuning to our show. In this segment, we're going to be talking about this. Ernie K-Doe, an amazing book, The R&B Emperor of New Orleans, written by Mr. Ben Sandmel, who's joined us here on the set today. Ben, thank you so much
for
coming by the show today. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Very impressed. And thanks to the great friends that we have at the Historic New Orleans Collection for their work with you and the great stuff that they're doing to
They did a beautiful job.
Yeah, they do. Tell me about how this came about and your involvement in actually creating truly what I haven't had a chance to read it, obviously, but to flip through it. What was that like?
Well, it's a lengthy process. Started getting interested in the idea of writing a book about Ernie K-Doe in 1998.
Really?
Yeah, and
well, what was that? Something you saw in him, or was it just an interesting
something I saw in him? I did meet him.
Okay.
I got to know him. I spent a lot of time at his nightclub, and it was such a visually and sonically rich place. It was like being on set of a Fellini movie, really. And he'd had such a varied story, you know, such ups and downs, and he was still determined to pursue his music no matter what. And it was a very hospitable place, a very friendly place, and just the whole combination of factors. I started by writing an article, and then I realized there's much more than an article's worth of material here.
Such a great showman, if I would say.
A great showman.
You know, if anyone's had a chance to catch Ernie K-Doe doing his performances or over the years, a phenomenal showman, legendary, of course,
Yes.
that so many of us here in New Orleans, if we had a chance to see him, he was just a local treasure.
Sure.
And such a staple in the music scene and has influenced so countless men of people over the years as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So the book is obviously then nothing but a labor of love for you.
It was a labor of love.
Big music aficionado, a big lover of music yourself?
I am. I'm also a musician, and I'm involved in working in music in several different capacities. So it's part of what I do, but it's also, this project was special.
Awesome. We've got some pictures we'll show you a little bit. If you're not knowing exactly who we're talking to, or talking about, I should say, Ernie K-Doe, the R&B Emperor of New Orleans. Love that title. Tell me a little about Ernie's history and background.
He was born in New Orleans, and if you ever listen to his old radio broadcasts, he was specifically born at Charity Hospital. It's a story he liked to tell and embellish, and he spent parts of his childhood in New Orleans and some in Baton Rouge, some out in the country in Pointe-Coupet Parish. He started singing gospel music at age 7 or 8. By his early teens, he was singing rhythm and blues and entering talent contests.
Really?
At age 17, he moved to Chicago briefly with his mother, and that's where he cut his first records. Came back to New Orleans, was in a doo-wop group called the Blue Diamonds, cut records for various other labels through the 50s. And in
1961, he hit it big.
61, yeah, he hit it big with Mother-in-Law, which was
right there.
#1, yeah, which was #1 nationally on both the pop and the R&B charts. It was #1 on the R&B charts for 1 week, and it was #1 on, oh, excuse me, it was #1 on the pop charts for 1 week, and #1 on the R&B charts for 5 weeks.
And what's interesting about it, there were so many other great songs that he had produced, but just, of course, none of them. It seems not that he was a one-hit wonder at all.
Good. I'm glad you said that he was.
But the commercial success of Mother-in-Law, you just can't surpass, you know?
It's impossible to predict why one record
so many other great
succeeds.
songs.
Yeah, but I'm very glad you said he was not a one-hit wonder.
No, by no means.
People use that phrase, and I find it kind of demeaning.
It is. It
implies he only had one good song in them.
Look who he's with. We just showed a couple of Robert Plant and some members of the Zeppelin, Robert Page, and, at least, is that Paul McCartney? Is that?
Well, it is, but K-Doe always referred to him as Paul MacArthur.
Paul Inland, okay, there you go. Really?
Yeah, and then he said, I taught him. Taught him everything he knew.
That's excellent.
Yes.
And but then in New Orleans, you know, his career in radio started in the 80s, correct?
Yes, on WWOZ. And up until then, he'd pretty much been a conventional rhythm and blues singer in the way he presented himself. But on WWOZ, his more eccentric, flamboyant personality came out, to say the very least.
And was it a morning or afternoon? Or
it was an early evening show.
It was an early evening
show.
show.
Yeah, I think 6 to 8 or 8 to 10. Huge listenership. And what happened was people would record the tapes, record them on cassettes back then, off the air, and this is before the internet, and they would send them snail mail if you can conceive of that,
No
in
way.
the digital age. But those tapes went all over the world, and there was a little cottage industry in trading K-Doe tapes. And when I started working on the book, there were certain tapes that were sort of like the holy grail for
Really?
collectors.
And you probably
Certain tapes.
went through hours and hours
I
of tapes,
did.
Ben.
I did, and then other people knew that I was looking for them, and I finally got a tape I'd been looking for a couple of years when he staged his rival jazz fest in the town of New Sarpy.
Oh,
And-
really? Down in St. Charles Parish?
Yes, and I got a copy of that, the New Sarpy tape, and believe me, it was worth the wait.
Wow, really?
Yes.
You know, we hear much about his great success, but he also had some professional and personal tragedies as well.
Well, he did. He was a riches to rags story. He had pretty early success. He scuffled in the record business for 5 or 6 years, but then he had this huge #1 hit, which came with a lot of money, and he wasn't really minding the store, and then the other records didn't hit. So 3 or 4 years later, the money was gone, and he was in debt, and he never did have a big record again. It was very frustrating. He spiraled down into alcoholism.
And is it true, is this an urban myth or not, that he actually was homeless and lived, you know, underneath the Claiborne?
No, that is true.
Really?
He was homeless for a time. He was in very, very bad shape. But even so, he would say things like, "I'm a millionaire, I just haven't been paid yet." And he always believed that he would have a comeback. And part of, to me, what makes the story of this book is that despite how low he had fallen, he did have a comeback. So there's a moral in there of not giving up and you know, having faith and ultimate redemption.
Persevere and continue
Persevere.
to, yeah.
Yeah, so, but he had some hard years.
But twice married, yes?
Twice married.
First one, but more so was Miss Antoinette.
Miss Antoinette
was really a turning figure for him.
Oh yeah, she just about literally picked him up out of the gutter and got him to cut way back on his drinking and created a venue where he could play at a time when no one else would hire him and advanced his career. And we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation really if she had not done those things back in the early 90s.
Now we've got some great songs, Mother-in-Law, Taint It the Truth.
Taint It the Truth.
A Certain Girl in...
Tee-ta.
Oh, look, I needed to have you do that because I didn't want to get a shot at that. Here Comes the Girls, of course, which was featured in a commercial, actually.
Yeah, it was a great song that he had done in 1970. It was released in 1971. It came and went without a trace. It was on a small label, or not actually a small label, but a label that was not set up to promote 45. So it was a very obscure record collector's song for 27 years, and then a drugstore chain in Britain called Boots, which is equivalent to Walgreens, used it in an ad. And in Britain, the Christmas ads are equivalent to Super Bowl ads here. People spend a lot of money on them. There's a lot of interest in them. The ad was beautifully done, and K-Doe's face appeared on the screen, and it became a hit. It was released in December of 2007, went up the pop charts in England, and then a young girl group called the Sugar Babes did a cover version of it.
Really?
Yes.
And he, you know, there's a lot of things that have been going on, Mother-in-Law Lounge, et cetera, and the great success there. But, you know, even most recently with Treme, you know, a little bit
Several scenes were shot there, and there have been excerpts from his radio shows used in Treme, a lot of K-Doe references.
What a glorious way that, even though since his passing, that he continues to influence and have an impact
well,
on
there's nothing he would like better.
Oh, absolutely, I'm sure about it. So tell me this is available. Where would one, if we're talking to Ben about Ben's book, Ernie K-Doe, the R&B Emperor of New Orleans?
Well, here in town, you can get it at the Historic New Orleans Collection gift shop at 533 Royal Street. You can order it online at www.erniekdoebook.com. erniekdoebook.com, one word. It's at bookstores and record stores around town. And out-of-town people can find it online. So we, the royal we encourage you to buy it.
Yes, absolutely. And I must say, it's refreshing the great work that the Historic New Orleans Collection is doing.
They do great work.
To archive, to encapsulate, to memorialize, and to remember the great history of New Orleans and its music history significantly that Ernie K-Doe has given.
Well,
it's just
I'm
fantastic.
very happy and fortunate to be working with them.
Well, thanks for your labor of love, Ben.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on the
anybody
show.
interested, please check it out. Go and buy the book today. It really is a true honor to have you here. Ben Sandmel, Ernie K-Doe, the R&B Emperor of New Orleans. Best of luck and congratulations on a great book, for sure. All right, everybody, that wraps it up for this segment of Cox Connections. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot for watching.